The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Paranormal Concept right here on Parasearch UK Radio with your host, Paul Rook.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host, Paul Rook, and tonight we are joined by the lovely Kerry Greenaway, as always. Hello, Kerry.
Hello.
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 Have you done your research?
Of course I've done my research for tonight. What are you talking about?
Good. I'll just sit back and let you get on then.
No, this is your show, darling. I would hate to intrude.
Of course, absolutely. So, what have you been up to this week?
I've been very busy.
Really? Anything paranormal?
Well, spiritual. I've been doing spiritual stuff so far this week. Been doing
awesome.
one-on-one spiritual guidances, and I've done tarot readings this week so far. And so it's been a busy old week so far. I've literally just sat down.
Fantastic. I've not done nothing paranormal this week, to be fair. Just done a little tiny bit of research for tonight's show, and that's about it.
A tiny bit.
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
On this huge topic you decided to pick, you've done a tiny bit.
yeah, done a tiny bit. Well, tonight's subject is going to be about mythological gods. And to be honest, they're all mythological. They're all mythological.
Going well so far.
Absolutely.
You can't even say mythological, and some of the names we've got coming up.
We can skip those names and go for the easy ones like Zeus and Hades. And...
Oh, okay, cool. We'll go for the easy ones. We'll just skim over the really difficult ones.
Yeah, don't you know it?
Yes. Well, go on then, off you go.
Okay, well, the only reason I came out with this mythological gods subject was because I really do find it fascinating that no matter what the civilization across the world, they've all got a basis for religion. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, after doing some of this research, they're not really all that different.
No, there's a lot of comparisons, isn't there?
There is. I mean, I was looking at the Greek gods earlier, and they had like what the Christians would call the Nephilim.
Yes.
And you had Titans, and so they're all sort of the same sort of race, all big, giant, monster type people. So, yeah, it was just really. They all had the same similar sort of basis, except the Romans, I suppose, because they just nicked Greeks' ideas and just changed a few names here and there.
Yeah.
To avoid copyright.
Was it to avoid copyright?
Yeah. That's it. So it's sort of like, they sort of nicked some of the ideas of.
Roman mythology just kind of piggybacked off of Greek mythology, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you had like Cupid in Roman, in Greek. Again, they just sort of changed the names. Although you had a Greek god Artemis, and the Romans changed it to Diana.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a little story, shall I?
Go on then.
Okay, I'll tell you a little story. In around 1600 BC, a man called Aeneas won the Battle of Greece and Asia, he then travelled, found Italy, just found it, on his travels, and he created this new mythology under, which is the Roman mythology. So out of the Greek mythology, he actually created this new mythology, which was Roman. So they class the Greek as, which way round is it? I've got to remember now. Oh, God. One of them is Keen, I believe, and then the other one is Diffin.
Okay.
So the Greek is I believe, Keen. I could be wrong on that because I can't rightly remember. But the Roman is Diffin. It's called Diffin. But that's why Roman mythology is so similar to Greek. It's because it piggybacks off of it, all because of this guy called Aeneas who did the travelling. And it was from his knowledge of the Greek gods and goddesses that he created this entire new mythology. Now, the other difference was the Greeks actually had specific characteristics, not just in personality, but they also had, they were very physical in visual. Do you know what I mean? They actually made them physical beings, whereas in Roman mythology, they were more used to the imagination. So although they've got a lot of similarities, the Greeks actually made them into like an image, whereas the Romans, it was done a lot more on imagination. Although they had very similar qualities, like personality qualities, and their stories were very similar. It all came out of this guy Aeneas, who actually reinvented it, as it were, for the Romans.
Yeah.
So that's sort of why you've got this duality between Greek and Roman gods.
I mean, I've looking at the list of the two gods now. There's a lot of Roman names that I recognise as mainly planets, to be fair, because you've got Mars, Pluto, Uranus, Venus, Neptune is another one, Mercury. They've got a lot of... The Roman names are more popular to the sky as opposed to anything else. But then you've got, with the Greek gods, I most of them I know from movies, to be fair.
Yeah.
As you would. You've got the Apollo. You got Apollo, Eros, Hades, Zeus, Hermes. I've seen all like the Jason and the Argonauts was the best one when I was a kid. that was a Greek. That was a Greek myth. You like Jason and the Argonauts and all those sort of things when he going for the golden fleece and and you had Perseus, the son of Poseidon. He was the one that saved a Greek town from the Kraken by lopping off Medusa's head. Yeah, Medusa being the one with all the snake hair going all over the place.
She was cursed because she actually, this happened quite a bit. Somebody who was really lovely, sort of like called out one of the gods and the gods then would curse them. And she was cursed with being this snakehead that only had to look at a man and would turn them to stone. So she, poor woman, poor old Medusa, you've got to feel sorry. But having said that, Medusa is incredibly vain and incredibly arrogant as well. But there's quite a few of those kind of stories. And that's actually really what these stories teach. They teach you, they've all got a moral. They're all sort of like a teaching tool. They're almost fable, like Grimm's fairy tales, aren't they? But people really believed in these, and they really believed that if you upset a god, in the Greek times, that it did have an effect. That you would actually have a god come down, and it was a time where they believed that gods walked amongst men, and had that crossover point before they withdrew to Olympus. So, yeah, it's a fascinating area of mythology. I can't deny that. Whatever way you want to look at it, because I say, you've got these comparisons between the Greek and the Roman, and basically names and places have been changed, but the essence of the stories are the same. And this is all thanks to Aeneas. Good old Aeneas.
Exactly. And one of the Roman gods, god of fire, is Vulcan. And up until the Pompeii, when it was destroyed by Vesuvius, they didn't have a word for volcano. So, but that's where that word originates from, Vulcan.
He was actually god of the forge, because one of the stories, isn't it, is how which one stole fire? A person, one of the demigods, went and stole fire from Zeus, and then that's where god of the forge came in, because then he started working in the blacksmiths and the thing. So Vulcan, or Hephaestus, I think is the Greek name, was the god of the forge. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did. I've just read it.
Anyway, let's go to the beginning. Let's go right to the beginning, where it all started from, because it is a fascinating tale, isn't it? In the very beginning of Greek mythology.
Yeah, the oldest source for Greek mythology are the two epic poems written by Homer, the Odyssey and the Iliad. Is Iliad?
Iliad.
That's close enough. Although the origins of the world and the vast effort to explain nature and the surroundings, and the very essence of Greek mythology itself lies within the Lexis of Hesiod, and especially that one. I think I caught this off Kerry Ann, you know. I can't say words tonight.
Honestly, some of them are really hard. This reminds me of a Friday night when Mark comes out with like some weird things. But yeah, the Iliad and the Odyssey of Homer are the earliest works, basically.
And the poem of the Theogony, is that right?
Theogony, yeah.
That's the one, yeah. Which I have got a summary for that I did send you.
Okay.
Did you read that? No. Well, you can read it now if you like.
I have to. Which page was that on? You're something about 20 million. Is this the synopsis?
The classical
okay.
literature one.
Oh, God.
Ancient
no, you
Greece.
can read that one. No, you do that one.
I can't see it.
Neither can I. Let's just look at the synopsis then.
Okay.
Well, in the very beginning, chaos was nothingness. Now, this reminds me of Norse mythology. When we did a show on Norse mythology, it really reminded me of this. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the first objects sort of like, they first appeared spontaneously. And these were basically Gaia, which was the earth, Eros, which was desire or sexual love, and Tartarus, the underworld, Erebus, which is darkness, and Nyx, which is night. So those just appeared out of nowhere.
As they do.
As they do. Now, this all gets a little confusing, everybody, so you might wish to make notes, because it all gets a little bit intertangled. Erebus and Nyx reproduced to make Aether, which is brightness, and Hemera, which is the day. And from Gaia came Uranos, which is the sky, Urea, which are the mountains, and Pontus, which is the sea. Now, you want to do a family tree on this, basically, because it gets so confusing. Carry on.
From what you just said, it sounds to me like those ones are elemental. What we would class as an elemental spirit.
Yeah.
Or fairy. This is where it ties in with other religions, I think. And on that basis, it sort of does make sense.
But again, out of nothingness, you get something that's created.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when God said there would be light, and there was light, and God said there was this, and there was this. It's like something
And
out
then
of
he'd
nothing.
see the electric bill and turned it off.
Yeah, it's like something out of nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and when you look at all these mythologies, there's always that point of something being created out of nothing. You know, I say even like when we looked at Norse mythology on the Friday night Dark Mirror show, there was something that was created out of nothing. So there was that point of creation.
Yeah. I mean, even with the Norse gods, they had like the 9 realms, and they had elves and other species of, you know, different types of people, and they were on their 9 realms, and they basically wanted to bring about chaos again. Mm-hmm. And the Asgardians were the ones that protected the 9 realms.
Yeah, but even with this, I mean, it goes on because, oh God, goodness me, Uranus mated with Gaia to create 3 sets of offspring. So you're talking about like the 9 realms. We've got the 12 Titans. I'm not going to name these because we'll be here all night.
Titan 1, 2, 3, 4.
Basically created 12 Titans. She also created a race of powerful deities that ruled throughout the Golden Age. The 3 Cyclops, a race of one-eyed, who are the race of one-eyed giants, and the first 3 Hecatonai Kiris, whatever they are.
Elf type people, I would have thought. I don't know.
No, they're actual 100-handed giants. Believe it or not. That's what they
big
are.
Elves.
That's a lot of hands.
Okay. That is. Yeah.
She weren't very happy with them, though, the 100-handed giants. So she pushed them back into the earth, basically. She pushed them back into Gaia's womb.
Right, okay.
And then Gaia, good old Earth, begged the Titans to punish their father.
Who was Chaos?
Well,
is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but only Cronus was the youngest and most ambitious Titan who would do it. Now, what he did was he punished him by castrating him, basically.
Nice.
Now, his blood splattered onto the earth and produced Erinis, who are the vengeful Furies, the Gigantus, which are the giants, and the Malaya, which are the tree nymphs. Okay, so this is where we really get almost very elemental, isn't it?
It is.
And then
so, yeah.
Cronus then threw the severed testicle into the sea, and Aphrodite was born out of that from the sea foam that created. So it's like everything came born from something else. It's that, and not one or two things either. There's like whole races that are born from these things. And I say we found the same thing when we was looking at the Norse mythology. So it's this mass creation, this mass explosion of different levels of creatures and entities. And I'm going with elementals on this. All these things are being produced out of this massive pot of creation that was created from that point. And all of a sudden, like, you haven't just got like this point of creation, but you've got a lot of other things all of a sudden coming into being. Like from the blood, you're getting so much more. You know what I mean? From just blood splattering on. So it's that point of creation. So it's how you interpret that is the key point, isn't it?
Mm. I just wonder where all these sort of ideas sprang from. I mean, it's probably something we're never ever going to know, but where did they all get these ideas from? Because, as you said, the Greeks have things in common with the Norse gods, and then obviously the Norse and the Greeks are all in common with the Romans, Aztecs, all these ancient civilizations that probably never ever met. Mm-hmm. Have all got the same.
There are elements
basis.
Of the same. Yeah, there's elements of the same, isn't there?
It's just like the same story, just told from somebody else's perspective,
or an interpretation of maybe something that did happen that they didn't know. Who knows? Even
with the Christians, that I mean, there's a theory that there was like the Nephilim, which are the fallen angels, like giant beings, and that's why God come about with it. This was it the 40 nights of rain or something, that where Noah had to build his boat to keep all the animals on.
Yeah.
It was to wipe them out, you know. So that obviously that's just a Christian story, but it still resembles some of this Greek stuff.
There's so, like you said, there's so many comparisons. This is what makes it so fascinating. But they're so complicated to say. When we was reading this earlier, we was going, if you try to write a family tree on like from the point of creation right through to all the gods and then the demigods where they mated with humans and stuff like that, oh my goodness me, that would be a family tree and a half, wouldn't it?
I did actually find a family tree.
Did you? Somebody spent the time to... Well, it doesn't surprise me, actually. It doesn't surprise me.
And I'm just gonna try and find it now. So if you carry on reading that, I'll have a look, see if I can find this.
Okay, I'll go back to. So we've got to the point where Aphrodite, the goddess of love, was formed out of the sea foam from good old Quirinus's testicle. They're quite a bloodthirsty lot. Now, Nyx, if we go back, good old Nyx, he produced 100 million children as well. I'm not going to list them all because there are many, many, many. And again, most of them have actually a kind of quality, shall we say, like there's discord and blame and death and sleep and murders and oblivion and fight. They're all quite nice, these ones. Lies, disputes, famine, they go on and on. Then... goodness me, those are not very nice people at all he birthed. But anyway, after Quirinus' castration, Gaia then got a bit fed up. So she married Pontus. Now they went on to produce the sea deities, nymphs and monsters, including Nereus, the old man of the sea, who is also known as Proteus, depending on who you talk to. And there were other descendants called the Nereids, who are the 50 nymphs of the sea. Otherwise known as Thetis. Thamus, who later married the Oceanid Electra. See, it gets ever so confusing, everybody. I mean, everybody's marrying and having babies with everybody else. Now, they bore Iris, otherwise known as Rainbow, and the two winged spirits, Elo, and Ossipetes, otherwise known as the Harpies. We know them as the Harpies. And the sea monsters that are famous throughout various tales as well. Now, one of these sea monsters, Cetus, her sibling Phorcys had many children. Again, many, many children. If you remember, the eye, give me the eye in Clash of the Titans. These were her children, or their children, Cetus and Phorcys' children, and they were known as the Greyi. The three grey witches with one eye. And they one tooth as well.
Did they share that tooth as well?
They did. They shared the eye and the tooth.
Cool.
And they were seers. So you'd be able to go to them for seer kind of advice. But there's always a trick with those. They weren't very nice. They used to eat people. So you don't really want to sort of get too involved with those. They also produced the three Gorgons. Oh, I didn't know that.
What's
Medusa
that?
apparently later gave birth to the winged horse Pegasus.
No, I didn't know that one either.
I didn't know that. Echidna, yeah. Oh, loads of them they had. But again, they're not very nice. I mean, when you look at Pontus's, what they produced, and when you look at what Nyx produced, and when you look at what Cetus and Phorcys produced, none of them are like particularly nice characters. I mean,
it was a bad time.
Chimera, the Hydra, the Sphinx, Cerberus, Ophion. These are all creatures that were born out of these couplings, and this is like sort of where this is all like on the god lands, as it were, at the moment. You know, this is all pre-human. Yeah. So we haven't actually got into the part where they start interacting with humans and stuff yet. I mean, the Titans themselves, God, they produced 3,000 oceanid nymphs. 3,000.
Okay.
That's a heck of a lot of kids, isn't it?
Just a few, isn't it?
But they also produced the river, fountains and lakes of the world because when they produced, because they produced these 3,000 oceanid nymphs, they had to give them somewhere to live. So they gave them the river, fountains and lakes of the world.
So would they're going to be basically the water elementals?
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
Yeah. And this is where you start looking at it. You start looking at it and go, actually, there's something to be said. You know, when we talk about elementals and people go, oh, there is no such thing as elementals. These, again, common themes throughout every single mythological culture that you look at.
Yeah. Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
I'd going through some of the Greek myths. I mean, you've got the Ursa Major in Greek mythology,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously that's a star constellation.
Uh-huh.
And it says, hang on a second, just pull that bit up. Right. Are you aware that myth about Ursa Major in Greek mythology? Do you know that the famous constellation, the Bear or Ursa Major, originates from Greek mythology?
Mm-hmm.
Ursa Major is one of the oldest constellations, apparently,
Mm-hmm.
and has the greatest number of stars.
Yeah.
So they'd have to count them and everything.
Well,
I couldn't do that.
all I can say is if we go into the cosmology or zodiacs or stuff like, you know, the star systems and astrology and that oh God, that topic is absolutely fascinating, but incredibly, we'd have to get an astrologist on to explain it to us, I think, because it is too big a topic. But
Well, it does say here that how is Ursa Major connected to the Greek mythology and the gods? Well, apparently Ursa Major was a beautiful woman who captured the heart of the mighty Zeus. So I don't know why they decided to call it a bear. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that's just that one.
Yeah, I mean, the early part of Greek mythology is the bit I didn't really know that much about, to be fair. I started coming into it really more once the Titans had been sort of overthrown by Zeus. And that is sort of the more mainstream point of knowledge, isn't it? Where Zeus is like king of Olympus and, you know, they overthrow the Titans because for one reason or another. And then you've got Poseidon, who became the god of the sea. Zeus became the god of the sky and thunder. And then you had Hades, who became god of the underworld. And there are others as well, like Demeter, god of the earth and fertility. Hera, again, you know, when you start looking at those names, everyone kind of knows those names. They kind of know roughly. If you don't know the stories, you kind of roughly know that the stories that get born down from that point. But the pre-Zeus, we'll go with, I didn't really know that part of it. I knew there were Titans, I knew that they got overthrown, but I didn't realise that there was sort of like a whole backstory bit before that. I hadn't really thought about it, to be fair.
I mean, there's loads of different myths, all about the origins of the gods. I mean, one of the most popular ones is Jason and the Argonauts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, they made a film of it. You also had the myth of Perseus and Medusa,
Mm-hmm.
which we've already spoken about. That's another quite popular one. But there are quite a few good ones. Even the myth of King Midas and the gold.
Yeah.
He was just a greedy king, and they cursed him by making everything he touched turn to gold.
And the Minotaur.
Yep, that's another one.
We if you remember rightly, when we looked at Lost, the show we did on Where is Atlantis, the Lost City of Atlantis, we touched on that island of Minos, didn't we? Where they think that that's where it's one of the markers for the lost city of Atlantis. We went around the Mediterranean, out to sea and backwards, I think, on that one. But it was one of those stories, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. But these stories we know, I mean, they're really popular. Yes, because they've been made into popular culture, like films like going back into the, 70s or 80s, the Jason and the Argonauts and
I think that might be that might be late 70s, early 80s. But yeah, I mean, obviously they're just a few of them.
Yeah.
But you still got stories of Psyche and Eros.
Yeah.
Calypso and Odysseus.
But those stories are being reinvented even today. I mean, Calypso, her kind of story is revisited a little, not in full Greek mythological way, but the essence of that story is actually in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, they even sort of touch on some of it in the Percy the Great, the lightning thief or whatever it was.
Yeah, they do. They touch on it. We're not saying that they're going to depth and you're going to learn the stories that way, but you get to know the names and the essence of those characters and those stories in modern culture, because they capture the imagination in a way that you don't. I mean, I've actually got a tarot deck that I use called the Mythic Tarot, which is based on Greek mythology, and Cups relates to Eros and Psyche, which is what you said. Wands is Jason and the Argonauts story. Swords is Orestes and the curse of the house of Artius, I believe. And the Pentacles is the story of Daedalus, who built the Temple of Minos for the Minotaur. So it even goes into like, these are quite an old deck as well. So even those kind of mythologies are still being used and to explain journeys through life and phases through life, and getting down to that, the rights and the wrongs and the phases we all go through in life.
Exactly.
Teaching lessons.
Yeah, I mean, even what film was it? Troy, with the Helena of Troy, and she was taken from her home and taken to Troy, and the Greeks didn't like it, so they went basically and sieged Troy. That all ties into the Trojan War and the Trojan horse story.
Yeah.
Where the Trojans hid inside a big wooden horse that they made and said to Troy, look, there you go, as a present, we're going now. And they just hid men inside so they could basically sneak out at night and open the gates for the rest of the army to take down Troy. So, I mean, yeah, the stories are still living on and people are fascinated by it.
Oh, completely. Sorry, I was just reading the chat room. We've got Bear and Kaz in there and having a right little chat. Because Bear works very much with Native American history, and they're saying, it's, there are oral traditions and lessons that are within there as well. You know what I mean? So that, again, you've got that connection through. Yeah,
I mean, I've not looked into that history because it's not something that I've got a passion for. So obviously with the Romans and Greeks, I'm quite in now, but with that side of it, I don't know too much about that, the origins, but I'm sure there must be some sort of similarities between the two.
I mean, Bear has raised a point. She says she's actually doesn't like movies stealing and recreating these because of the way they do it. They don't do it in an authentic way. They literally take a tiny piece of it and make a film out of it. That's not the point we're trying to make. The point we're trying to make is it keeps those names and that interest in that kind of mythology relevant in today's society, even if it's brought to you in a bite-sized snapshot piece of a name or a film like... I know when my son watched the Lightning Catcher one,
the Lightning Thief.
I know he then went away and started looking deeper into the more relevant histories behind it. So it actually made it quite a useful starting point, basically. It made a starting point for him to actually go get an interest and actually start looking into the actual myths and legends themselves. And he learned quite a bit. And that came off the back of watching a film. So, yes, we're not saying that these movies are a good source of research, but they'll give you a good starting point. They'll keep those names and those that taster of that myth, I suppose, that snapshot of that myth that might make somebody go away and look deeper into a topic and actually learn more. And that's where it's relevant in today's culture, to keep people interested, to actually go back and look at these myths and legends in a way that's they probably haven't before, and actually find the truth of it. I mean, I remember one afternoon we watched Clash of the Titans. Don't believe the myths and legends that are created from Clash of the Titans, but when I took him to a planetarium, the guy was actually going through various constellations and actually telling the story, and he was actually saying, well, if you've watched Clash of the Titans recently, which had been on TV, this is the real story of that. And my boys were sitting there literally transfixed by the guy who was telling the real mythology, not the film version. So I do think it's a good way of introducing these themes to kids, because if they're interested, they'll go away and they'll learn more.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, the old classics, the old versions of these films, Clash of the Titans, Jason and the Argonauts, you always had, you always had like the monsters, and they were obviously models, and they were trying to animate them. And it was really quite bad. Rubbish.
Now,
really bad.
Now, when you look at it, it's bad, but at the time, it was groundbreaking.
I mean, it was. I can't remember what film it was now, but the skeletons coming up out of the ground and having a sword
Jason
fight
and the Argonauts.
Was it? Okay.
I think it was Jason.
And it was. Of course, it was fictitious, but it just intrigued you and drew you into the story, and it was still telling the original story. Okay, some of it was fabricated, but some of the elements are true. Well, according to the myths, anyway.
Loosely, I would say, but I do see your point. I
definitely, the original story.
I definitely take your point. But look at what's involved in that. It's like the hero. You've got a hero of Jason. They've got a quest because they've got to go and get the golden fleece. They've got the adventure. They've got some massive characters in his tribe of warriors that go off. There's fighting. There's monsters. There's gods. There's it's perfect, isn't it? It's a perfect story to ignite the imagination, but still teach you fundamental morals and qualities that you take forth. I'm going very posh tonight, clearly. But they have those relevant themes running through them. And they're also a lot more fun, I would say. Those kind of mythologies are a bit more fun than, no disrespect to religions, but they're a bit more fun than religions, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got that sort of film with all some elements of the actual myths and legends, but you've also got films like Troy. Now, I don't know how historically accurate that was, and I'm sure there was some bits that were made up just for the film, but still get the point of, like, for example, the Achilles heel being a weakness.
Yes.
It was that story of how they killed Achilles, when obviously in the film they shot him in the back of the heel, wasn't it? And that sort of mimics the original story.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just puts it all into this epic movie. And I'm sure there's other bits and pieces in there that, as I said, the Trojan horse, for example, that's another story that wrote from that whole Troy movie.
Yeah, but again, there was a whole backstory to that. in Greek mythology. That,
Yeah.
you know, it actually comes down to it's to do with the curse of the house of the Atrids in Mycenae. Oh, however you say that, Mycenae or whatever. Anyway, that's where it was. Which basically, he had two sons that, you know, they were supposed to rule, and then they killed somebody. He was the illegitimate son of Pelops, and then they arrived, and the local nobles wouldn't recognise them, and then Thyestes suggested that the carrier of the golden fleece should become the king, and then and it became a whole backstory to this before we even get to the Trojan Wars, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I do like the whole Percy Jackson version of the Golden Fleece. That was quite a good story.
I haven't seen
But
them, to be fair.
totally different to like the original, like Jason and the Golden Fleece or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it was a totally different story. But again, as you said, it's names and people, places, and
and it all gets a little confusing. But it created a huge war, thousands and thousands of people killed in that war, and it became just one part. The Trojan War was just one more part of the curse of this royal house of the Atrids. And it was full of, again, you look at that story, which is actually detailed. I don't know if you've ever gone and studied, studied something in college. The book, or the I can't even remember what that bit's called, but Homer wrote that, didn't he? And detailed it all. And if you get past the language barrier of how he wrote, it's absolutely fascinating.
yeah. I'm just looking up at the Minotaur in the labyrinth.
Yeah.
Of Crete. Now, again, that was another Greek story that was connected to Hercules. I think.
Good old Hercules.
Yeah, and
Otherwise known as Heracles.
Heracles, because he's the son of Hera, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, this the Minotaur was basically a prince, or the son of King Minos, and he was cursed. So he was put into this labyrinth to scare people off, basically. Mm-hmm. And again, they put that story in one of those type of films as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one, but I just remember them going into the... I think it was like a forest, I think, at the time. And then they found the cave to the labyrinth. Didn't they have to try and find something in there? If I remember rightly, I don't know.
I don't
can't
know.
remember now. But yeah, they basically, it was. I think it might have been like Percy in the film that slay the Minotaur.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. No, I don't know. But I know the Queen was naughty because she slept with a bull that was sent by Zeus, and she actually gave birth to the Minotaur, who was a half man, half bull. Now King Minos was very embarrassed by this. Which obviously he would be. His wife, his queen wifey, has been a bit naughty by Zeus, led by Zeus. But he didn't want to kill him, so he actually hid him in the labyrinth, which was constructed by Daedalus at the Minoan Palace of Knossos. Now, apparently the Minotaur ate them, so he used to imprison his enemies in the labyrinth, so the Minotaur would be fed. But it's also said that it was so complicated, the labyrinth, that nobody could ever find their way out.
Yeah.
Now, the son of Minos, Androgeus, went to Athens to participate in the Panathenaic Games, but he was killed during the marathon by the bull that impregnated his mother. It goes around. Minos,
that's a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, his son was then killed by the guy who'd slept with his wife. By the bull even, that slept with his wife. Minos wasn't very happy and demanded that Aegeus, the king of Athens, to send 7 men and women every year to the Minotaur to basically avert the plague that was caused by the death of Androgeus. Right?
Okay. Yep.
So you're following us. See, it gets very confusing when you start looking at them. Now, in the
I am,
third
but
year,
I'm just looking at another story as well that ties into the labyrinth. But
cool.
I'll talk to that in a second.
Okay. In the third year, Theseus, son of Aegeus, decided to be one of the 7 young men that would go to Crete in order to kill the Minotaur and end this 7 men, 7 women sacrifice thing. Now, King Aegeus tried to make him change his mind, but Theseus was actually determined to slay the Minotaur. He promised that he would put up white sails when he was coming back from Crete to let him know that basically he was coming back alive. And if he died, then the boat would return with black sails if he was killed, basically. And then he told King Minos that he was going to kill the monster. And he said, that's fine, you go and kill my monster. But it was also, King Minos, was also pretty sure that Theseus was never going to be able to get out of the labyrinth, right? But then Theseus met Princess Ariadne, who was the daughter of King Minos. And now this is where the love bit comes in. I want violins on this one. She fell madly in love with him and decided to help Theseus. Now she gave him a thread and told him to unravel it as he walked into the labyrinth so he could find his way out again.
Yep.
I'm thinking breadcrumbs in a forest at this point.
Yeah.
So basically, he could kill the monster and still find his way out, which he did do that. He did manage to kill the Minotaur, saved the Athenians from being sacrifices, and with Ariadne's thread, he managed to retrace his way out. And then he took Ariadne with him, left Crete, and sailed happily back to Athens.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. I was actually looking at the flight of Daedalus and Icarus. And basically, those two annoyed King Minos. I've not gone back far enough to look into why, but they annoyed the king, so he basically threw them in the labyrinth. And Daedalus made some giant wings for Icarus and himself to basically escape the labyrinth. But obviously, from what everyone knows about the story, Icarus actually flew too close to the sun, and the wings melted.
Yeah.
And he fell to his death.
Mm-hmm.
And he fell into he drowned basically in the Icarian Sea.
Okay.
And that's why it's called the Icarian Sea, because of Icarus. And there's a nearby island called Icana.
Mm-hmm.
Again, named after Icarus.
Wow.
So there you go. Now you know. You've heard it here first.
Well, I know that Daedalus was one of the most known and accredited architects.
Yeah, it even said in there in this one that Icarus was quite inventive as well. So sort of running the family.
Yeah, so the pair of them, they actually was first architects and sculptors and inventors in ancient Greece. Apparently, they invented many devices such as the axe, the saw, the ceramic wheel, and the masts of the boats.
There's just so many of these myths out there.
It's not just
even
that,
the
but they seem to have
Pandora's
hundreds
box.
of kids as well, don't they?
They do, but then they didn't have telly in those days.
Aha!
So
True.
maybe that's what it is. But no, I mean, most of these stories I've heard of, but I just never really, took much notice. I mean, you've got the myth of Pandora's box.
Yeah, again, an enduring myth. We all know about Pandora's box, don't we?
Yeah.
We know what the box is supposed to have been and what was created when she opened the box. But what actually started her to the point where she wanted to open the box, that story is not particularly the backstory. It's the backstory, isn't it, from that?
It is.
The essence of the story.
Interesting.
She opened the box and all crap came out. But, and hope came out too. And in some versions of the story, hope stayed in the box, depending on which version of the story you read.
Yeah. There's just so many myths and legends, obviously. We can't go into them all.
No.
But they're all out there online for you to have a look at. And you know what? You probably know most of them already.
If you don't know
But
the
it's
whole story, you'll know the back or the essence of the story. So, like with
you know some of
Pandora,
it at least.
yeah, you'll know a part of each of these stories. I mean, Pandora was actually the first woman on the earth. She was actually created by the gods, and they gave her each of them gave her a gift, and her name in Greek actually means the one who bears all gifts.
Yeah, it's just fascinating.
It is.
Really is.
She was actually created as a punishment to mankind.
Yeah, earlier on I was reading about some of the Norse gods as well, and they obviously they believed quite heavily in land spirits, which basically are elementals.
Yeah.
Again, to cover that also, and that they were actually told to take on the boats of the Vikings. They used to have like dragon heads.
Mm-hmm.
And they were told whenever they're approaching new land, they have to take that dragon head off so they don't scare the land gods.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did, because I read it earlier.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, exactly. And that bit of knowledge will stay with me forever.
I was going to say...
I'll use that again.
Yeah, you will. That'll come up again in the show.
It will, I'm sure. But no, it's... The whole thing is just so fascinating, but I would still love to know where all these stories originated from. That's something that will probably never be known.
Is it just where people were travelling and sharing like a good story, and to give people a purpose, a meaning to their life? So a really good storyteller has like come up and... then you get somebody like a major architect like Daedalus, and they get incorporated into like another story.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense that could have possibly happened to the bigger civilizations. But when you get down to like, for example, a little civilization in the Amazon that's never had any outside contact with anyone ever, they still have their own basis of religion. And it still resembles everyone else's. That's what I find fascinating.
No, I totally agree with you. When you look at, if you look at some of the more remote tribes, they actually aren't. So they're not like one god. There'll be a god for the seas or rivers. There'll be a god for the forests. There'll be a god for this. There'll be a god for that. Mm. You know what I mean? And very almost paganist in their way of worship or ritual. Yeah. When you think of Africa or the Amazons or something like that, they're quite ritualistic, but they're still giving offerings and performing these rituals in however they do it to a deity of some form that embodies a particular element. Yeah,
I mean, I watched one of these programs on the telly, fishing for monsters or something it's called, and this guy goes out fishing for these massive big river fish in the Amazon, and some of these tribes actually claim that that's their river god. Mm-hmm. So obviously he has to have special permission to go in and try and catch this giant fish. And some of the stuff he's caught is amazing. So you can certainly see where they get some of the ideas for river gods, for example, in that particular show, where they get that idea from. It is just amazing. It really is.
I find it fascinating. When we've done, we did on the Dark Mirror, we like to delve into this little area a little bit sometimes. And we looked at Native American stories, and much as we laughed and had a laugh with it, again, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Yeah. And we looked at Norse mythology one night. I mean, we're only getting a chance to touch on some of these topics because they're so huge. Like I said, we've only mentioned a couple of the various tales that these mythological gods, embody. But the whole point is there's these crossovers between cultures, And when you're reading one story, you'll think, oh gosh, I remember reading that under a very strange, although it's different names and slightly different story, it's still relevant. You know what I mean? You still got that common themes running through it.
Yeah, indeed. And yeah, as Kaz said, we should do more of those shows. Sounds like a good idea.
I do find them fascinating. To be fair,
Yeah.
I do find them fascinating because just different ways of looking at it. But I also find it incredibly fascinating how different people resonate with different cultural stories. Like for me, the Greek side of it, not so much the Roman, but the Greek side of it is fascinating to me. I'm not so worried about Norse. That doesn't really interest me. I mean, Vikings interest me, but not so much their mythology doesn't really interest me. I'm not that worried in general, no disrespect to anybody but the Native Americans. It doesn't capture my imagination in the same way that certain other mythologies do. But I find them all fascinating. When we've looked at any of these, I find them absolutely incredibly fascinating. But there are ones I would definitely want to spend more time looking at than we get a chance to for these shows.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the ancient Red Indians and that they were very spiritual and they were guided by nature.
Mm.
And I think that was quite heavily influencing in the way that they do things and what they think. You know, you had like the Apaches that were quite brilliant at hunting and things like that, but that was all born from learning about nature.
Well, they were really linked to their environment, weren't they? So depending on the environment they lived in, whether they lived in a dry, deserty kind of environment or a more lush... Because that's one thing that surprised me when we were looking at the stories. They were talking about ice. A particular story we looked at was about... It felt almost like Alaskan Canadian, up high. And I was like, well, I didn't even know they were up that high. I just kind of, in my head, I suppose, I've been brainwashed by the many cowboy and Indian kind of films that have been on over the years.
All in the desert.
Yeah, I always saw them sort of like in Texas, Arizona, those kind of areas. But, you know, when we looked at one, there was a mammoth story that we looked at. And that was, there was a lot of ice. And I was thinking, oh, they wouldn't have had ice in Arizona. So I learned that they weren't just in one area of America. They went all incredibly...
All over.
Actually, yeah, and they went higher than anticipated, you know, as well. But so each tribe was working with the elements and the environment around them and incorporating that into their deities and their beliefs and their stories. And that is that's what I find fascinating. So wherever you go in the world, you'll find that the stories are very similar in context, but it will fit the environment. Even though the names and places have changed, the actual stories themselves, when you distill them down, are very, very similar.
Yeah.
In general.
But we've literally come to the end of the show.
Oh gosh. See?
I know.
We thought we'd have five. We could go on with various stories, couldn't we? We could sit here all night and go through different gods. Hundreds of them.
No, are you glad we ditched the Norse gods?
Wow, I just... It was a big enough topic anyway.
We did cover them anyway. Just touched on the subject.
Yeah, we brought them in a little bit. And so
we covered them.
I mean, Penny was talking earlier. She did a tour of Rome, going onto the Roman side just to finish off with. And she said it took the tour guide 20 minutes just to tell the story of Remus and Romulus. So we wasn't ever going to be able to get that in depth into the topic. But it gives you a bit of an overview. No,
that's it. I mean, we've told you enough and it might intrigue you. And maybe you can go off and do a bit more research.
So when you come across a name like Calypso in Pirates of the Caribbean, I suggest you go and do a little bit of research and find out the myths and legends behind these people.
It's not just a nice lolly.
Oh, it's not just an ice lolly, and it's just not a weird voodoo woman from the Pirates of the Caribbean, I think is the point there.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, there's so many of them, and we can't cover them all.
No.
So, quickly, do you want to do a rundown of what's coming up in the week?
Yes, I can do that for you. Now, tomorrow night, unfortunately, our very own Sean Cadman is poorly.
Oh, hope he's all right.
No, he's fine. He's just got man flu, so he's man down at the moment.
Okay,
so
light one then.
Well, no, we won't go that far. He's really, really poorly. He was, no, oh gosh.
Get well soon.
So the Supernatural chat show tomorrow night is actually going to be a rerun of a previous show. I have yet to decide which one. But at 9 p.m, Haunted Histories, Richard Eastep is on the show with Penny G, talking about Malvern Manor.
Okay, cool.
Interesting one. Apparently the devil comes a-knocking there. Now,
awesome.
On Thursday evening on the Spectral Zone, the lovely Kaz Rooney has got Wrestling with Ghosts, Luke and Vinny in the studio with her. That is going to be a mad show. I would just like to put that out there now. That's going to be quite a mad one if I know them two lads at all.
Are they all going to be in their wrestling outfits? Kaz included.
Vinny reckons he's going to do it shirtless.
Oh, okay.
Oh, talking of which, I need to get their Skypes. On the Dark Mirror Show, just got to remember that one. On the Dark Mirror Show on Friday, we have got scrying. We're talking all about scrying and methods of scrying. What is it? How do you do it? What you should expect when you do it? That sort of thing. So we've got scrying going on Friday, which is interesting because how many times have we tried to do that on an investigation?
Oh no, and I've got one of those things for it as well.
Crystal ball, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And
on crystal ball, I've got that.
Oh no, you've got the scrying glass, haven't you? You've got a black obsidian scrying slice. Yeah.
That's what I was trying. Yeah.
That's right. I remember that. Now on Sunday evening, I have got a cry out to the paranormal world going on about a research project that myself and Ashley are working on at this point in time, all about research and the project we're trying to work on at the moment and what we need from you guys out in the field. So please listen to that one and get an idea of what we need from you guys, because we've been trying to approach people and people are getting a little bit, no, it's my investigation research. So I want to put it out there and try and get paranormal teams either from now on going forward trying to collect some of the data that we need so we can build up this research project, or if they've got it, give it to us so we can build up this research project, which is actually going to be quite a massive project. So that's how we're talking about that on Sunday.
Cool.
And we've got a competition on the Parasearch Radio group page.
Excellent. And what's the prize for that?
If you'd like a medium reading with our very own Claire Hinks, pop your name on the Parasearch Radio group page pinned post, competition post, and you must be a liker of the Parasearch Radio group page, obviously. That would be awesome. And don't forget to check out the website.
Fantastic.
Parasearchradio.com. Yes. And we are on YouTube, we are on Podbean, we are on SoundCloud. Pop over there, give us a like, subscribe to us, because then you'll get all the updates. And trust me, you'll want to join the brand spanking new Parasearch Radio YouTube channel, which I will be launching later on at some point. Brand spanking new is all I can say. Lots of lovely things going to be happening on that channel. So guys,
fantastic.
Go over, subscribe, like, comment. Let us know what you think. We are your paranormal radio station.
Indeed.
I think I got it all in.
Letters on a postcard. Yeah, I think you covered it all. Yeah, and possibly a live feed on Sunday, about 8 o'clock, isn't it?
I do believe at 8 o'clock on Sunday, our very own Paul Rook is up for a question. Yeah, it's your turn this week. Questions and answers. He will answer anything you want to ask him. And
paranormal related, please.
Well, you didn't chuck a paranormal related question to our lovely Kaz, so I think you put a challenge on the table there, Mr. Rook.
Okay, Ask a silly question, get a silly answer. Just remember that.
Well, at least we get to see your sense of humour.
Yeah. But I think that's everything. So it's good night from me.
And it's good night from
And
me.
it's good. Yay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.